Hey everybody, I hope you're doing well. We're a couple weeks, 3 now, actually, I guess, into the semester. So I hope you have gotten access to the software. I know that was kind of held up for some people. So you may just now be getting into it, but I heard that you guys are starting to learn a little bit about the pen tool. So I wanted to go ahead and make a video to maybe help concrete some of that stuff you've learned and maybe teach you some other shortcuts that you haven't learned yet that might make things a little bit easier. So we're going to do this pen tool video, and I'm going to help you learn how to make the pen tool your bitch, because the pen tool is one of the most important things that you will learn and use. It's a little bit overwhelming. It can be kind of confusing at first, and some people start out hating it and then just never use it. And it's a shame because it's a really good tool, and it makes a lot of things easier. So first I want to talk a little bit about the difference between vector versus pixel. Illustrator is vector-based and Photoshop is pixel-based. So if you are someone who has had some experience in Photoshop, you probably have had a lot of experience with this, but Photoshop is made up of pixels, which are little teeny tiny squares. So that's when like the resolution of a photograph comes in, and whether or not how big you can make it, because it depends on how much information it has. And so each square is kind of like information. So if we zoom in on this, as we get closer and closer, we can start seeing that this picture is actually made up of teeny tiny little squares, all different colored, kind of like one of those mosaics. So when you go back out, all those teeny tiny squares, even in the skin, make up a very detailed photograph. Illustrator works differently, as it works in vectors. So vectors are actually a lot of really complicated math. So I did a Google search just to, have a visual for you. So vectors work with what's called a Bezier curve. Bezier. So there's some really technical information there for you. If you want to know more, go to Wikipedia, apparently. And if you want to learn what the actual formulas are, apparently that's the formula. But lucky for us, Adobe Illustrator does all the math for us, and we don't have to worry about any of that. So let me show you the difference with a vector. So here's just a circle. So it's made up, basically it's got 4 anchor points, and then it's got curves. And these curves are all math. So if I zoom in, let me select away. Oops. You can see it doesn't really matter how far I zoom in, you've still got a beautiful crisp line. I mean, like we're super zoomed in. So the reason this is good is that with it being math-based, we can make this circle. So this should be set up, it's showing pixels, but it is likely an 8.5 by 11. Yeah. I can make this circle huge. And it still has, it didn't lose any quality because it's made of math, and it just rescaled that math to a bigger version. So what that means is that we can design a logo to be an inch, but we can also take that logo and blow it up to huge and put it on a billboard, and it won't get fuzzy. Ooh. I don't know if you've noticed, I downloaded a app that shows my keystrokes, so you can kind of see the shortcuts that I use. So like I use V for selection. So let's get that back down to size so we can, so I just made it big, I made it small, I lost no information. So that's really the benefit of vectors. Okay, so we're gonna hop over here to these plain artboards, and I'll show you a little bit of the basics. So first, as always, if your interface doesn't look like mine and it's confusing to you, you can load Essentials Classic. If it still doesn't look right, you hit Reset Essentials, and then what I always do, I pull these out because I don't like them there. And so this is how I like to work. So you go over here to the pen tool, and the shortcut is P, so that one's nice and easy. And if you press and hold on that icon, you can see all of the tools that go along with the pen tool. So I'm going to click over here, I'm going to pop that out so that it's right here and available for me to use. So this is always something you can do because it'll be right there. Like I can zoom in on something and it'll still be there, and I can click these. Once you start to learn your shortcuts and understand kind of some of the things I'm going to teach you, you probably won't need to do this, but it's here handy if you need it while you're learning. So with the pen tool, what I'm doing, what you'll be doing is making anchor points, and in between those anchor points, the computer draws a path. So if I click here, I've made an anchor point. If you hover over it, it even says anchor point. And then I pull over here and click anywhere. I've made another anchor point. Oh, my stroke is pink, so it's nice and bright. And this, you can't really see it because they're both pink. It says path. So we've got anchor points and paths. I'm going to turn, let's just make this black. Okay. So I can click around, make an interesting shape. Just warning, nothing I make today will be beautiful. We're just practicing, so it doesn't matter. So I don't know if you noticed, when I get to that original anchor point, if I hover over it, you'll see that all of a sudden there's a little circle there. That means you're going to close your shape. So I'm going to close that shape. So now this path makes one whole outline. And this will be a little bit weird, so let's see what happens. If I switch my fill over, it fills that in, and I've got a shape. And just like before in the other video that I showed you, I can hit my direct selection tool, hit A, I can grab an anchor point, I can pull that, I can modify it, I can pull that out. So that's how you just modify that shape. You can switch back to that selection tool because you've made a shape. If you don't close it, then you've just made a path. And let's get rid of this ugly thing. So let's just make a path, straight line. So I made my path here, and see how it's got a fill, but there's no shape, so there's nothing to fill, so it's just blank. If I switch this over to my stroke, then I've got a black path here. And then, so I've made a shape that's open, and if I want to fill something that's open, it's going to kind of fill that shape in, even though it's not finished here. So like if I move that there, like it kind of finishes that. This will make more sense, I think, when we show some curved things, because the fill is a little bit weird. So if it's looking a little funky, double check on what you've got going on with your fill and your stroke for your shape. All right, so click, point and click, lines, shape, ta-da. Okay, with that, real quick, if you click and you have your first anchor point, if you press and hold shift, And that actually doesn't show on the keystroke. So I'm pressing and holding shift, and it's going to constrain this line to 45-degree angles. So if I want a completely flat horizontal line, I'm going to press shift and click, and then I let go of both and I have a straight line. If I want a 45-degree angle, I want to try and make some sort of triangle, I can hold it there and I can do a 45-degree. And then of course I can come down here, close off my shape. So one other thing, I don't know if you've noticed that sometimes the little picture next to the pen tool icon changes. So we've got a minus, a plus. There'll be some other things that it kind of changes into depending on what you're hovering over. So if you take the pen tool, we're just on P with the pen tool, and you hover over an anchor, you get a minus sign. So that's this, I'm not even pressing anything, I'm just hovering over the anchor. I've got a minus sign. So it's quickly switching to this tool, because pretty much the only thing you'd want to do, you know, right now, just hovering over it, is it thinks you're going to want to subtract that anchor point. So you can just delete that anchor point. That makes the shape go away since it was a triangle. So I'm going to just hit Command Z and undo. Command Z is another shortcut that you will use over and over and over again. And so Command Z is undo. Shift Command Z, there's the Shift Command Z, is redo. So you can use those to pop back and forth through steps that you've done if need be. So we hover over that, and we can get rid of that anchor point. If we hover over a path, it changes to a plus. So we've got the plus over here. So it's called Add Anchor Point tool. So we hover over and we've added an anchor point. And maybe you're like, okay, why do I want an extra anchor point there? Well, maybe I realize that I need to pull that out over here. So I've added an anchor point. You have to have the object selected to be able to do this. So if you're noticing, like, you've got the pen tool, you're hovering over this, but you're like, there's no plus, Erica, there's no minus. It's because this shape is not selected. So I've selected the shape, and then I've hit P, and now it's giving me those options to add anchor points. And I can switch to my direct selection tool by pressing the shortcut A, and then I can manipulate like before. One other thing, and I don't know that I mentioned it earlier in the other video, if you see these, when you click on an anchor point, you see these little guys, they actually will round out your corners. So you can pull that down. And there's occasionally some angles that don't quite work mathematically, so sometimes they don't show, but most, if you have a sharp angle, you can pull a curve in. If you've, we see how that happened, if you've got actually the whole thing selected, all of these curves will come up. If you grab one, it's going to curve all of those. Or if you grab one and have them all selected, it will curve all of them. If you click and select one and grab it, you're only going to do that one. And so that's with the direct selection tool. You've got moving anchors. Didn't work because everything was selected. So you got to go in there and click on that one. Now you can move it. You can pull a corner in. You can move a whole path. That made something funky. Okay. I have notes over here. I'm trying to make sure I don't miss anything. Oh, so this was actually something that I kind of forgot about. I don't use very often, but looking it up, I'm like, oh yeah, super helpful. So, and this is for other tools in Illustrator. If you hit the Command key, it will shift back and forth between, it'll shift back to the most recently used tool. So right now I'm in the pen tool. If I push and hold Command, it switches to the direct selection tool because that is the last tool I used. If I let go of Command, it goes back to the pen tool. So I can be drawing something and go, oh, that's weird. I don't like that there. I can press and hold Command, select that anchor point, pull it over, and then when I take the command, I unpress Command, I'm still in that pen tool. I'm still working on that same shape because it just switches back and forth. So, and it's between the last two you used. So if I had used the text tool and the pen tool, that wouldn't work. So I'd have this, and I'd switch to the command tool, and it's not going to my, it is going to my arrow. That's new. So sometimes I will be proven a liar because things change or I've forgotten. Again, I'm not an expert, and I learn too. So any tips you guys have for me, I always love learning new things. So switching Command might actually be, it always switches to direct selection tool. That might be, click that. Yeah, it's switching to the direct selection tool every time. So if yours does something different, let me know, and we can figure out why there's a difference. Okay. Some other quick things. Well, I'm going to wait on any other shortcuts. I want to go over the curves. So, because not everything is straight lines. So if we select the pen tool again with P, again, if we click, we get a point. But if we click and hold and drag, then we get these, they're called handles. And they, you pull those handles out and you start making curves. So you pull that handle out and then you click and drag and pull and let go. And then you can come over here, click and drag and pull, and you've made a shape with curves. So now when you switch to your direct selection tool, you can actually manipulate. And so all I did here, I'm still in the pen tool, but I'm clicking or pushing and holding the command button, and I can go in and I can change my handles. I can change where my anchor point is. I can go, oh, that's too curvy. If I pull this handle in, it changes that curve. If I pull this one all the way in, it actually gets rid of it. So this one actually only has one curve and one straight that goes into a curve because of this handle. I should be able, well, I don't think you can. I was thinking you could pull out a handle with that, but that you have to do differently. So those are the handles, and they're what determines how the curves are. So I suggest, and even if you flip, then you've got a curve, and it does the math to switch this over. So you can even cross over stuff and make some pretty funky things. Make like a moon shape, super strange angle. So those are the curves, and that's where a lot of the math comes in, figuring out how this works. So another quick shortcut, which is great and helpful. So I'm in my pen tool. I'm making my shape, and I realize that that's the wrong spot. I don't want this anchor point there. I've messed up. If I press and hold the spacebar, which apparently it's gonna show you that I'm holding the spacebar, I can move my anchor point and go, oh, that's where I need it. As long as I don't let go of the mouse, I can hit that spacebar again and move it. I can move it here, all the while I'm holding the mouse down, moving the anchor point. So as soon as I let go, then it makes the curve. So that spacebar is really helpful, and I'll kind of show you, I'm going to show you all of these in action, and I think they'll start to make a little bit more sense and sink in a little bit more. This this red line that comes out of the anchor point you just did. It's called a rubber band preview. I just learned that today. So it's showing you a preview of, if I were to click right here, that is what that line would look like. Same with the straight. It's still a rubber band preview. That's what that line would look like. So if I pull out a curve, it gives you an idea of what's going to happen, you know, where that curve is going to want to go. All right, let me get rid of that. I don't think I went over the convert, the anchor point tool. So let's make something with straight stuff here. So I've made just a weird polygon. If I go over here to the anchor point tool, which is Shift C, it's also, I don't know if it is now, but it used to be called convert, because so I can take these anchor points and I can pull out. If I click and pull, I'm changing that anchor point from a straight to curves. So I took the anchor point tool and I pulled it out like so and made curves. And then I can do the same if I click, if I have a curve and I'm like, no, I need that to be pointy, click on the anchor point and it converts it to a point. So I've pulled these out. The other thing you can do is if you click on that handle, it gets rid of that handle. So now I have a curve here, but not here. I can also, let's see, oops, okay. I want to see both, wanted you to see both of the handles. So if I click and hold and pull on this handle, then I can affect only this one. If I want just that one independently, because I need this to do kind of a bump, you know, come down to a point, I can just move that one with this tool. As you're drawing, you can use that convert or anchor point tool by using Alt. So if I click and I pull this out, and so I'm still holding the mouse and I hit Alt, then I can manipulate this however I want it. And so now I've got that same kind of point with the bump curves that way. So that's how you flip the other side of the curve out. And that's by click and drag, hold Alt, and then you can control that curve. You can also, hang on. If you hold Alt or Option, it's Option on the Mac, I'm saying the wrong thing. So I drew my line here, my curve, and I've let go, and pressing and holding Alt, I can do that. I can change that curve again, but I can also go back and convert that, get rid of that, I believe, if I get it right. Okay. So you can go back and move these, and then you can even pull that out. See how I went in and it wasn't a curve, so I went in and pulled a handle out. So that kind of helps you control which way your curves are going while you're drawing. So don't forget to close it if it's a shape. If it's a closed shape, don't forget to close that, because sometimes that can cause some confusion. So, and then one other quick thing, I'll undo that so I have an open path here. So say I'm working on this and I've ended up clicking over on the selection tool, and like when I click P, I'm like, oh no, like I need to finish this. I didn't finish it. So if you noticed when I went over this path here, over that anchor point, it's got that little slash symbol next to it. That means that you can click here and continue working. So if I click once, then I've got a straight handle here. If I come in and I click and drag, then I can work on that curve. So that's to continue your path after deselecting a shape. Okay, so I know that was a whole lot. I don't know how long this video is getting, but I was able to get a hold of the shape file that you guys are going to be working on for your assignment. So I thought I would just show you this in action on the thing that you're going to have to do. So I'm going to zoom in on this heart. And if you notice over here, what I like to do is if I have a reference, so this piece is your reference, I keep it on its own layer, and then I like to make a layer on top just to keep them separate, and then you can lock this layer so that you don't accidentally like move it while you're working. Super annoying. So you can lock that. Make sure you're on layer 2, and then we're going to go into our pen tool, and either you can change it to something bright or a color you like on the stroke. I generally like to leave the fill empty until I need to fill it because it gets in the way, and I can show you that in a minute too. So, and then also sometimes the stroke gets in the way, so you can actually use the pen tool with both of these empty, and you'll just get a really thin, it's a path, but there's nothing there. So on this heart, I would pick kind of a point. I tend to pick points for my starting point. You can pick wherever you want. If you pick a starting point on a curve, it might make it a little harder, but it doesn't matter where you start. Whatever you think is best. So I would start here in the center and just do an anchor point. And then so I tried to look at where is this curve going and where does the curve kind of change direction. So it's going up, and then it hits a little bit of a flat spot, and then it starts going down. So I'm going to choose to put my next anchor point here. I'm going to click and hold and drag out those handles until it matches that shape behind. So then I've got my preview, and I can kind of see, well, that'll fit pretty well. It doesn't have to fit perfectly because I can click and drag and get that next curve. And what you're doing is you're kind of watching, you're pulling in the direction the handles want to go. This next one is a little bit easier because, well, it doesn't quite fit. So maybe we could do one here, and we're going to pull that handle so that it was going to follow that line, and that tends to help. So then we come down here and I just click. So now we have the curve over here and a straight over here because I didn't pull those handles out. If I had pulled those handles out, this is a situation where you can hit Alt, change that, and then you've got that, that angle is changed. Or you could just go back and hover over it and convert that. Say, oh, I didn't want that to be. It's not quite working right. Use that convert tool. You can do it that way too, and change it with the convert tool. Just click once on there. So this is a situation where I would hit P. I'm not like part of that anymore. So if I hover, click there, then I'm continuing that same path as before. In a symmetrical object, you can kind of try and keep these the same. So I'm like, oh, I've got a point here, click and drag. I've got a point here, click and drag, and notice, okay, if I'm being really picky, which you should be, you notice that my anchor point isn't really on the heart. It's a little bit off. If I press, I'm still holding my mouse button. If I press and hold spacebar, I can move that anchor point and I can get and be like, okay, there, that's better. And then I come over here, click and drag, and then come down, and I'm finishing out my shape. So there's some funky things going on, and generally for me on the first pass of tracing a shape, I just really try to do the best I can, because I know that I can come in here and get persnickety. I got laughed at today for using that word. I can get really persnickety, and I can come in and I can be like, okay, this needs to maybe move a little bit. This angle, that curve's not working, so I'm going to pull that out. Notice that, I'm affecting both of them because I pulled with the direct selection tool, so that's much better. That's not quite right. And when an image gets pixelated like this, it's a little bit hard to trace. If you're tracing images, you want to try and find the highest resolution image you can, so you don't have to worry about too many pixels, kind of confusing things. So then I've got my shape, and I can make it pink, I can move it, I can do what I want with it. So I've traced over the top of it. Generally, when you're doing pen tool tracing, you want to use as few anchor points as possible, because then that guarantees more of a straight line. And that's not necessarily true all the time. Maybe sometimes you want some texture to that line, and you can get a lot of like wobbly if you've got a whole bunch of anchor points that kind of mess this line up a little bit. So for hearts, I don't know how well it will work, since this is an elongated one. A lot of times hearts you can actually do with just like 2 anchor points. If you go to the Bezier game, it shows you exactly how to do a heart with just 2 anchor points. And I can link to those games again because they're super fun. So I'm pulling that out, and I'm kind of guessing because I know that pulling this out is going to make a curve. So then I've got this curve going, and I can come down here and I can try and match this up with these really long handles. So that's pretty close. And this is where you're like, well, crap, now like, what the heck am I going to do with this? That's super weird. You get rid of that handle in the many different ways that we showed you earlier. So the most fluid way to do it is you pull and drag, get that curve to match where you want it. It's kind of close. Hit that Alt, and then bring this angle up here. And then you can come, oh, that's not going to work. Well, that's funky. So I think if I had my angles better, I could come and it would curve up. But even though it looks funky, I know that I can fix it. Should be able to pull. Oh. So maybe it's just me, maybe it's the shape. But if you get it right, you can post on the video and brag and show me how you did it. And like I said, the Bezier game will show you how to do it with just 2 anchor points. So I'm going to go in and do a little bit more complicated one. So I'm going to hit my pen tool. I just tend to start over kind of on the left side. I think that's just a habit. So I start here, and I want a nice horizontal straight line. Looks like this is, 90 degrees. So I'm going to hold Shift and click there. I'm going to move these out of my way. And then I'm going to follow this, and make, this is pretty much a circle, and sort of. So a circle has like 4 anchor points with those, you know, perfectly 90-degree handles. So you can hold shift and get those nice vertical and horizontal handles to make a nice curve. And then this one, I'll come in, pull this out, get that just right. You see I hit spacebar and it goes a little crazy, and I can move that and go right there. And this is actually where you would pull this out and hit the anchor, or the Alt option button, and pull this over that way to get that point. Another way to do it is there, and then you can come back in and hit right there, and it gets rid of that handle. Now you've got a straight line, but you can come over here and pull that out. And just know, if it's not perfect, I can always go back and refine all of my points. So this is where having a fill going while you're drawing kind of screws things up, because now I can't see that at all. I have no idea where to go. So the pen tool will stay active if you go over here and click on things. So I can go over and get rid of my fill, and I can see my point. And then I'm going to go back and click that anchor and get rid of that. Or I could have come in and done, oh, too far. So Shift Command Z to go back and forward. And apparently I went too far, so I'm just going to delete that. That wasn't selected. Okay. So I got rid of my fill. I want to go back. I need to connect. So I'm going to pull that angle out, come up here, pull that, and then I can do like that. There. There. Don't forget. Okay, I know it's not right. I want to put it there. Let go. And then I can also hit the space bar if I'm not like clicking the mouse. If I just hit the space bar, it switches to the hand, and I can move my artboard around so I can get a better view of what I need to do next. So I'm gonna pull that out. I'm gonna pull this. I don't tend to do the Alt or Option as much as I just go back and click that anchor point in those situations. Click and pull. That one's actually about right. Come down here. Click and pull, and there you have it. So, of course, I think I went out too far. It's not perfect, but I can go in and I can fix it then. I can get rid of stuff. I can add points, draw them out, pull that, and get it exactly the way I need it to be. Let's see if I'm missing anything else. I don't think I am, so I think these shapes are really good practice. Like, yeah, these are definitely the basic shapes. If you come over to the complicated shapes, it's just going to take more time. You're just going to have, these definitely some, can be time consuming, and, how fiddly you want to get. Pull. And I'm just kind of guessing, just making some points and pulling. Pull. Oh, I'm gonna hit the space bar because that's not quite where I want. Need that. And just do the best you can on your first go around. And then you can always go refine. So I hope that's helpful. I 100% recommend that you go to play those pen tool games because they're actually fun. They teach you kind of everything I just did, probably in a much more simple, quick way. Um, and they give you really good practice. It's also their games, they have scores, so like post your high score if you want to, and we can have a little competition. Um, See who can win, get the best score on the pen tool games. I will link those in this video description on the Facebook page. I think that's it for now. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask me. If you notice I did anything wrong, or you're like, oh my gosh, I know this cool thing that you don't know, please tell me, because I love learning new stuff. And just so you know, you will never, ever, ever know everything about this program. There's so much, and Google is your friend. There's a million tutorials and lots of different resources to help you figure things out. So I bet you this is super long video. I will let you guys go. I hope it was helpful, and have fun making the pen tool your bitch. All right, bye guys.